think that Dawson Creek had just about anything that a young person wanted to do.
All our fun was made ourselves.
We didn't play soccer, but we played softball and had games like pump, pull away and that kind of stuff, and for activities outside and races.
Well, I guess living here is something that we come for. We made what it was. We entertained ourselves.
Street hockey, horseback riding, swimming in the dugouts.
If you had a swing those days, it was something that your parents made, and you didn't have any fancy slides and stuff those days, but we got by.
The only thing I don't like about today's world is they can complain all they want about the children. You know, they're lazy, they didn't grow up right, or whatever, I don't know. It's just the kids have nothing to do, not like the older generation did. We were kept busy when we were kids.
We'd have to get wood in, so they'd take, and that was a big picnic day. We'd take the big old truck, of course, and go up top and cut wood and load it in the truck, and we'd have a big picnic.
I had horses, and I had to look after them, and they're in the barn, and I had to clean the barn, and I had to haul feed.
Well, the league actually started in 1946. Ed Carberry and a fellow by the name of Jerry Thompson more or less headed it up. And they formed a bit of a league, about 4 teams in it to start with. Dawson and Hythe, Grand Prairie and Fairview. Yeah, was the other club.
Well, for one thing, we obeyed our parents. That was one big thing. You didn't get away with saying whatever or doing whatever. You went by what they said.
I don't remember us going to a doctor, because we did. Not that I knew of. I don't remember ever going to a doctor when I was a kid.
But I remember my grandma, my mom, she rode a horse when she was 90. He had her riding a horse around.
You know, it seemed like then they never worried, you know, like we do now. I mean, it's, you know, I think about it now. I mean, we would never think of bundling up our kids and sending them off, you know, by themselves. But it was those days, I guess, you know.
If you want a buffalo bird like out, you're in trouble. You have to get him right in the first shot. If you don't, he's going to get you one way or the other. He will. You have to lay him down the first shot or second shot, whatever.
They used to get snare rabbits, chickens. Now you don't see a chicken in. I don't think there's any chicken left in this world.
Well, I remember having to get permission because I was under 21 when our oldest daughter was born. They needed his signature to give, which I thought was a little ironic. It was me that was having her. That's the way it was then.
But then down on the river flats in the old home place, they used to have lots of barn dances and summer picnics.
When we was back doing like Hank Williams stuff and Charlotte Pride and this stuff, Merle Haggard, they was all on the softer side.
Mm-hmm.
But now the country music is, the country music of today is just like the rock and roll was back in the 60s.
And in the 50s and the 60s, country dances used to be the big thing. On a Saturday or Friday night, people would jump in their car and they'd go to a country dance. So we played there. Dave Hamilton and Vern Broughton and I played there lots. We played at Chetmond, and we played East Pouce Coupe, Farmington, and a lot of the dance halls. In that era, people were traveling and dancing, and that we've kind of lost that now. It's too bad. Television now is taking that away on us.
Rodeo lot. My oldest sister married Albert Yeager, and Wes Yeager had a big ranch at Doe River, and I just about lived there. I loved it out there. And then he held rodeos out at, right on the Clayhurst, on the hills overlooking Clayhurst. We called it the cow camp. We'd move all the horses up there every spring, and he put on some awesome rodeos.
Years ago, people helped, same with haying. Everybody had horses and cows. I used to hay different families when I was a kid helping. Now they don't do that.
Long time ago, people, they used to, whoever had something, they share.
I hold a lot of respect for the seniors and the people who have pioneered our community and our area.
You look out there, you see quite a long ways. You see all the way to Pouce, see all the traffic on the highway, see all the trees changing colour different times of the year. Right now it's just starting to turn yellow. And this nice blue sky we have here.
I don't know, yeah, or anyway, coming home you could see those, northern lights. And close to the graveyard we were walking by, so we started whistling. And my Uncle Dan used to tell me not to do that, not ever. So, the kids, I was just a kid then, I was maybe 14, 15 years old. So we started whistling. I said, let's whistle at it. And she said, okay. So finally you could see the green, red, we were just like this. And we're still whistling and whistling. So we want to know what happened. So still I'm walking on the ice. And pretty soon you could just hear them right here, like that. You could hear that, and you could smell it like sulfur. That's how they smell. Oh my God, did we ever get scared?
We used to hear stories when you clap your hands, they come down lower. And they say you can smell them. We've tried it a lot of times when we were kids.
Do you say your prayers in Cree?
No, I can't, but I am going to learn because long time ago that's how I prayed with my mother. It's in Cree, and I don't know what happened to me. I used to believe nobody can forget their language, their Cree language, but it happens because I forgot to pray in Cree. I do pray in English, not in Cree.
On the sides of the road, and there were mosquitoes. Mosquitoes like you couldn't believe. Just swarms of mosquitoes. And I can remember going in the tent there as a kid, and the chickens would sneak under the edge of the tent and come in the main tent, and they'd lay an egg on the bed. So we had eggs.
We come down in a van from Fort St. John to Dawson Creek, and the heater was gone. Just about froze to death. And this was my initiation to the Peace Country. I wouldn't get out from under the quilt because I thought we'd hit the end of the world.
I was born in a tent.
I came to the Peace region in 1960. We emigrated from England. And, coming to Pouce Coupe was just a sort of a surprise. Not expected. We thought we'd be farming, but we didn't.
So I looked out the window and I thought, what have I done? It's such a shock. They'd had a very bad hailstorm, and so everything was flat. There were windows broken. I guess the hailstones were set as softballs, and it looked so bedraggled. Of course, there was no pavement either. So.
I was 35 years old. I come from Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming. I had an uncle that worked on the Alaska Highway, and he used to tell me, for a young guy, that was a place to go. Go to Dawson Creek.
No, I think it'd be good for them to come. It's a good place to come to and raise a family or just live.
I said, well, okay, let's write it out. And he said, when he came to Hudson Hope, he said he thought he found heaven and wanted to move here.
That
I like traveling and I like going other places and seeing other places, but boy, am I ever glad to get back.
Hey, they say if you ever drink water out of the Peace River, you'll always come back.
Yeah,
I believe that. And I like talking to Americans, and they all love this country.
I liked it here. And like the people here, I have left a time or two, but always come back.
His word was good as gold. No signature was needed, or so I have been told. Listen to the heartache, the laughter, and the tears. Feel the call of the peace as our great elders did.
October 10th, 1914. To my dearest wife and companion. Good news and bad. As you know, I plan to take my traps and gear with me on the sternwheeler D.A. Thomas to Hudson's Hope. I have arrived, despite a few minor setbacks which I will explain later. I am most certainly glad that they had put in the Dominion Telegraph a few years ago, because I was able to contact the game warden, Ed Forfar, who was also the first policeman here, to discuss establishing my trap line. Mr. Forfar regaled me with tales of the history of this region and told me of Alexander Mckenzie, who in 1793 was the first to discover the area. Also, Simon Fraser, another great explorer who was responsible for building Rocky Mountain Portage in 1805, that being the old name for Hudson's Hope. This community may have been named after a prospector called Hudson, whom hoped to find gold here. Why, just last year, the first barge of coal, high-grade anthracite, was shipped out heading for the town of Peace River. Dear wife, I am in a land of history, and it is still being made.
Fur trading. And then also was mines, coal mines. It was Getting coal mine, Drisky coal mine, Packwoods coal mine.
There's so much history in here. It's from the Indians. When I first came, there was a few Indian tents on the riverbank, first Indians I'd ever seen. There was no road across the river for a long time. It was trails to Mobley.
Yeah.
But
well, isn't that what Mr. Peck used to do? Wasn't he the ferryman?
He was a ferryman for a while, but there were other, was a fellow by the name of Art Alexander, he was a ferryman too.
Built an ice bridge, and he describes coming across that, and it was really quite scary. But that was the way they crossed in the wintertime, and the ferry boat in the summer, yes. Up until, 1964, that's when the bridge was built, yes.
The river actually was our life stream, really, because we lived by the river. We'll come up with the Hudson Bay boats when they came up about once a month, I think it was, in the summer. And then I came up on the little little Hudson Bay boat to Hudson Hope.
And it was continued as a Hudson Bay trading post until 1955. when Hudson Bay closed their store here.
Summer 1915. To Constance, my fair lady, who I miss very much and think about often. Greetings from the village of Pouce Coupe. I have just arrived here from Grand Prairie where my new traps and supplies are waiting at the train station for me. I trust you and my son are in good health and that everything is going well. I was fortunate enough to be traveling with a couple of men who knew this area very well, Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Tremblay. A friend and fellow trapper introduced me to these rugged pioneers, Mr. Joel Walton. You may remember him from the time him and I trapped together on the Lone Prairie trap line. Mr. Frank Hoskins is a trader and storekeeper, and he told me that his store is in a tent for now. He was bringing back some store goods and other needful items from the end of the Steel in Grand Prairie. My dear wife, this country is filling up. They now have a post office and are building a bank of commerce, and they have a police station. I shall be home for Christmas for a short time, God willing, and we will be as one again, dear wife. My heart and my thoughts remain yours, Constance, and until we are together again, I am your loving husband, Jeremiah.
Of course, I was also a waitress. I was waitress in the Hart Hotel when that was in Pouce.
In fact, Pouce was the seat of government here, because you couldn't get to the rest of BC from this area. You had to go through Edmonton to get into BC, you know. So this Pouce was the place, and that was where the government buildings were, and the government people, and the public works, and that. I don't know how to explain that in Pouce. It was just, but it was a very small place. In fact, it was more important really than Dawson Creek at that time, because of the government situation, you know, the government buildings. And the liquor store was there too. That was very important, especially years later, Alaska Highway. It was the only liquor outlet in the country. You know.
Dawson Creek actually it started where the bypass crosses the creek west of Dawson. That's where Dawson Creek was.
Supposedly the landowners in Pouce, in negotiating with the railroad, were so greedy that in the end they were fooled, and the McKellars and some of these early pioneers made arrangements for the railroad to set their station up in Dawson Creek.
We brought the railroad on into Dawson Creek. That's my father and my uncle.
And no electricity for the first part of my life in Pouce. It was private then. It wasn't BC Hydro. There was people by the name of Cersei's had the power plant down there, and they had it in Dawson Creek too to start with.
We had electricity in the old town from a private outfit. So of course when we come over here, the big outfit came in and the town moved.
And they moved the whole town in 1931, the railroad hit.
They brought the co-op in. Now, but they would move it along the road, and the farmers would come along and they'd tie their horses up, and they had a winch. It was moved by a winch.
It still is. If you go to the cafeteria at the co-op, you'll see the same type of people there, and it is a gathering point. But it was more so before. It had the credit union in it, and it was the big store. It was the big shopping store in town.
The Dewdrop Inn received the very first license in the Peace River country in, I believe, 1936. And then in 36, when they got the liquor license, they expanded. And there were various other businesses like a cab stand and a transport company.
Bakery.
And a bakery that were located in this building before it was named the Alaska Cafe.
But shopping was enjoyable in those days. We really enjoyed it. Saturday night was a big thing. You had time to go uptown and go shopping, you meet people, and it was great.
Well, it was a developing town. The most amazing thing was to find out that if you walk to the center of town, you must wear your gumboots, but don't expect to have two of them on by the time you got across the road.
The roads weren't paved to come to Dawson Creek. There was potholes and lots of potholes. Well, there was wooden sidewalks. There were still dirt roads.
And with the gumbo on your shoes, you would slide off. So usually, I would just take my shoes off and go barefoot in the road. I mean, heck, it's easier to wash your feet than clean shoes, you know. It was just unbelievable.
To my dearest wife and companion, I send you news of my journeys from Little Prairie. It was mostly just a stopping place where travelers can pasture their stock on the abundance of grass and water before moving on to wherever they were going.
In 1934, my parents moved the whole family to Chetwynd, which was actually named Little Prairie. My folks bought out established little trading post. It was very small, and also in 1932, the post office, the first post office was made official in Chetwynd, so we had postal service at that time.
There were no car roads, highways. It was horseback or sleigh or wagon. And my dad hauled the mail. He was the mailman from Little Prairie to East Pine. And he went down on Tuesday and came back Wednesdays. Once a week we got our mail.
Grizzly bears, I used to walk around all over camp. They used to come and eat there about 50 yards away from my camp.
Fall 1951. Now at least we have a good road from Dawson Creek and you can travel south to Prince George on rough trails, though rumor has it will soon be a highway. Over the hills to Moberly Lake, where the natives believe a group of cannibals called Weetagoos live. Or you can go south to Lone Prairie or east to where you are, my love, in East Pine.
A friend and I drove north for a great adventure in the Great Peace River country, over the gravel Heart Highway between Prince George and Dawson Creek. Way back, I guess it was the summer of 1955, bouncing around in our old pickup in the gravel, I stayed in Chetwynd, where there was the schoolroom and the teach ridge attached.
My dad and Frank Oberle were the two that spearheaded the road from Chetwynd to Hudson Soap. They were the presidents of the Chamber of Commerce, and that's how we got it started. And
you had to wait till freeze up and build an ice bridge, and then have the exciting time of when the ice was going out, the last load, you know, coming over the ice bridge with the water welling up all around and coming, those kinds of things.
My dearest wife, Constance, we need to hang on to our little piece of heaven. The Homesteading Act is bringing in people from all over the world looking for their peace. There is free land for those that want to put some sweat into the improvement of it. Every day there is more land advertised for settlers.
Homesteading? Well, that's when you take a parcel of raw land and you got to clear all the trees and break it and pick the roots and rocks and what have you. A lot of hard work.
At that time, you could get a quarter section for $10, but the stipulations were you had to, within 5 years, you had to do, I think it was $1,600 worth of improvements, and some of it being, I think, 20 acres had to be broke. You had to have a house on it, and you had to live in it. You had to have dugout, fencing, stuff like that. It was the Homestead Act at that time, but then what you'd call prove it up. So in 5 years you would own it. You could go in and homestead another one.
What brought me here, us here, was a full-page ad in the Portland, Oregonian newspaper of free land in British Columbia.
In 1962, we was living in Idaho. We saw an article in the paper that told about a family that was homesteading at Fellers Heights. We moved there with no job and no money, but we really had fun that summer because the berries was really good and the children was free to run and holler as they pleased.
If you were 10 years old, you could go trapping. And we trapped squirrels. You already could set them out, and you rode on horseback out into the wilderness, and you bounded in and you could set the traps. And by the time you were 11 or 12, you could take the 22 and go shoot squirrels. Before I went to school, I had gotten 124 squirrels, skinned them, put them on the boards, and sold them. And that's how I got some extra money to buy a coat and to buy my winter boots and to buy my gloves to go to school. That was very important because there was no money those days except what you made.
And a lot of times we'd go and camp out for the whole entire summer. Dad would shoot a moose, Mom would make dry meat, we'd pick berries. It was like a holiday. That was our holiday. Never ate out in restaurants, there was none. You prepared all your own food, there was no McDonald's. Life was simple, but it was good.
We just worked on the homestead after work when Dad would come home, and everybody seemed to do everything together, and everything went good, I guess, in them days.
But when we milked the cows, we just put it in the shed and behind the sun or something like that and stay cool.
And then in the summertime, one of the big treats was homemade ice cream, which we usually did on our birthdays. And Dad would bring the ice out and we'd wash the sawdust off it, and you had to chip it and everything with the axe. And a lot of you guys probably have made homemade ice cream, and we all had to take a turn cranking, and that was a big treat on birthdays.
Constance, my dear wife, they are calling these years that we are in at the moment the years of depression, and it rings so true. The people on the farm are doing okay food-wise, but the townspeople are the ones that are lacking. Who would ever figure that in this land of plenty you would find rationing?
Like I said, it was happy, and for kids, it was tough. It was a depression time, but I don't remember that at all. We always, like I said, had plenty to eat and played ball.
Well, we had one horse, and in the spring my dad, he went and traded that horse off to get a garden spot plowed. So we had a garden spot and no horse. Well, that's the way it goes.
I remember I had about $6 left in my pocket when I got here, so here I hunted lots, really, always a good hunter too. And that's how we fed our family, with moose meat and potatoes, along with the other things.
It'd be potato soup, potato hotcakes, potatoes, because she made us in different many ways, and of course we eat everything, because I mean, what else you can eat, eh? I mean, there was nothing, you couldn't buy nothing, nobody had any money, and I mean, you couldn't afford to buy anything, eh? No, yeah. Yeah, she was pretty rough old hungry 30s, I'll tell you.
Wheat there once, we had nothing till Father got back from town. It was pretty hard up them days.
Working in the bush and go there and trapping and all that stuff, like keep me going in the morning.
Yeah, we had lots of fun in the winter too, even if it sometimes went down to 72 degrees below Fahrenheit. Oh. I remember that. Nobody went to school, and we hardly went out at all, and you had to just dress really warm in the house, because even the old log houses weren't all that hot. You stuck pretty close to the big barrel heater that we had there.
We even had the water, or it was so cold there, we even had to have our fuel oil in a container ahead of time before we used it to put it in. Because it would come out of the barrel like molasses when it was 30, 40 below. So.
It was cold. We had this barrel stove and the kitchen stove to keep us warm. But then, of course, by that time we had attained a bare robe or two, and Dad did have a buffalo robe, kept us warm at night. We had to put the bare robe underneath us and the buffalo robe on top to keep warm. So everything froze solid all in the morning. It was a matter of getting thawed out first and then carrying on.
Yeah, but then there was no water. You had to in the wintertime, melt your own snow. There was no running water, there was no electricity. There was outside Biffy with a Eaton's catalog for paper. Yeah, you didn't sit out there very long and read a story, I'll tell you, 40 below.
And you remember in the years when you used to save all of your woolens
Like when the wool socks couldn't be mended anymore, they were saved, and the men's long underwear, when it was totally worn out.
Patched to death.
You would save all the woolens, and then they would send them out to, was it Regina?
Somewhere in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, somewhere in Saskatchewan.
It was like what we would say a recycling depot now, but they took these woolens and recycled it and made blankets.
A horse and cutter in the wintertime. A cutter is a small, Dad made it. It was a small wooden box on two light runners. So it would slide along in the snow, and we had a single horse pull that. So Dad would bring the horse and hook the horse up to the cutter in the morning. We'd be all dressed and come out, get in to the cutter. We had a rabbit robe made out of rabbit skins sewn together and covered with a wool covering that Mom had made. And Dad had a big hot rock that he would put in the bottom of the cutter to keep us warm. And on the bottom of the cutter inside was straw. And then he had a tarp over that straw. And he'd put the rock in the center of that, cover it with the rabbit robe. The warmth, you could feel the warmth under that rabbit robe. And we picked up kids along the way to school. We'd start out with 2 of us, but we'd end up with 6 of us in there.
I remember in the wintertime, we put our lunch kits out in the little cloakroom we had, and it was so cold in the wintertime that our lunches would freeze. You know, we'd bring them back in to eat them, and we'd have to wait for a while before, you couldn't even bite them. They were frozen solid, you know.
You get a strap or disobey the teacher. You could possibly get a strap, or you could stand at the board and write 500 lines. I shall obey my teacher, or something like this.
And my mum got sick, so we had to quit.
I went to school now and then. We used to miss a lot of school because the roads would be too bad or too many snowbanks, you know. There was no road plow being done then those days.
Rolla School was the first high school around, and a lot of people came from different areas and stayed with people in the Rolla district and went to school at Rolla for their high school.
Spring 1943. A letter to you, my darling Constance, about my travels and how my concern for you and the children journey with me. I trust this letter finds you and the boys well, and I can happily report that this last season's trapping was very good. But unfortunately, because of the war, fur prices are still down, just like the last 4 years. But any money coming in is good. So here I am in muddy, hectic Dawson Creek. I was told that about 4 years ago a large group of refugees from Czechoslovakia settled around here, Tom's Lake, I think, and doubled the population of the area. They are called Sudeten's.
1939, that's when the Sudeten's came in from Czechoslovakia because of the persecution by Hitler when he overran Czechoslovakia. Most of them settled in the area just a few miles north and west of Swan Lake in an area that we called Gundy. There was a Gundy ranch that was owned by the CPR, and the CPR in turn had turned the ranch over to the Canadian government to accept the Sudeten immigrants. So this would have been in 1939, and we had an increase in our school enrollment from these students. And it was quite an education talking to them, learning about where they came from and how things were in Europe.
I came to Peace River Country in 1939 in June as a young boy with my parents. They had been involved in the Sudeten land of Czechoslovakia in the anti-Nazi movement, and we were in fact refugees. And we came to what was then Tupper, and later became Tom's Lake settlement. The Canadian government had set a regulation that for anybody for this group to come in, you had to have $1,500 per family. Now 1939, it was spring of 1939 when we came. That was a lot of money. It bought you a farm, a whole farm. But the money was turned over to the railway company. The railway companies had organizations to look after immigrants. They controlled the money. So in fact, these people had no money except what was doled out through the CPR people. See, in Saskatchewan, some of them were there.
So when we came over in '39, there's quite a few families that just couldn't put up with that type of life because most of them were city people, okay? None of them were really farmers.
Very few were
that
farmers.
immigrated. We weren't farmers. We were all professional people or in the industry. So a lot of them couldn't handle that. So then the CPR, who was in charge of our colonization here, they were able to find jobs for these people in Eastern Canada, like Toronto, Hamilton, Montreal, into the war, and put them in the war factories. Okay, so they were back in the city, and they also had jobs. A lot of them couldn't handle the
So you have
country
no
life.
idea how many people?
Well, when we all arrived in '39, there was over 500 bodies. Actually, that settlement had more people than Dawson Creek at that time in '39. It's hard to grasp that, yeah. But I think we had more people in Tom's Lake at that time than the population of Dawson Creek.
Local businesses are thriving with new ones setting up just about every day. It seems like everyone is working. I have heard that there is a large group of Negro soldiers stationed here, but they are restricted to their camps and not allowed to fraternize with the townfolk. Strange, isn't it? I can't recall ever having seen a Negro before and would like to. Please tell the boys that I miss them and we'll see them both soon. Until I return, Constance, know that I miss you, I love you, and pray for you and remain your loving husband, Jeremiah.
When the war come along during the hungry 30s, that changed everything. It made work. The men went to the war. Things kind of loosened up. But before that World War, times were tough.
And the American Army came in. They needed a route to protect Alaska.
When the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor, they upset our thinking about a great many things, including Alaska. From Alaska, the Aleutian Islands stretched out invitingly toward a shrewd and daring enemy. The great Japanese air and naval base at Paramushiro was only 750 miles from Attu. Attu was only 1,200 miles from the mainland of Alaska. The Canadian government had already carved out a series of 5 airports between Edmonton, Alberta, and Whitehorse, Yukon Territory. And there were other fields in Alaska between the Yukon border and Fairbanks. With Canada's consent, the United States War Department decided to build a military highway from Rails End at Dawson Creek, Columbia, to Fairbanks, Alaska, to link up and supply these airfields and to provide emergency access to Alaska for troops and materiel.
So they came into Dawson Creek via the little piece of road in between Grand Prairie and Dawson Creek.
Dawson Creek suddenly just, it was kind of a little one-horse town, and it suddenly just boomed overnight. Just, the American Army just took over, and there were just people everywhere.
Can you imagine a little town of
500 population, and overnight, actually, you might say it grew to 12,000.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I can't.
And bingo, we got a road. We got a good road. And then they started building the Alaska Highway, and there was a tremendous influx of soldiers into the area.
Well, I can remember standing at the corner of the Dawson Hotel when they were first starting to build this, when it did get to town, is the convoys.
And I recall soldiers on the street and looking at all these military vehicles and, quite in awe. Of course, being from the sticks like I was, everything was awesome to me.
I seen these doggone guys, they were packing pistols as big as themselves. There was the Yankees in there. And when they came in, we were out in the trap line. And when we come into Dawson, here was every soldiers all over the doggone place.
Moran Station was up here. That's where the American Army was when they were here. That's what originally started up there. Was that's where they had their big camp, their base camp.
As the American soldiers came in, they came in very, very quickly. And they were just as shocked because most of them were young boys, many, many, many from the deep south, who had never seen snow.
The Negro people, the boys, they had separate, they weren't allowed to associate with the white guys in those days. And I remember my sister-in-law and I were going to bowl in the bowling alley with these boys, and two MPs come in and said to these guys, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You don't do that. You're not supposed to bowl with white women." So they had to get out.
And in the 1940s, I was say 5 and 6 years old, and I was living there when they dug the pipeline in for the water line that still served Dawson Creek. The Army was there. There was a whole bunch of Army soldiers and equipment digging the trench. And as a kid, I was down there watching it, man. And there were a couple of fellas there, and this one fella says to me, "Hey boy," he says, "you all got any chicken, any fried chicken up there?" Because he could see my grandma's chicken walking around. So I wasn't sure what he meant, but I went and talked to my grandma, and she said, "Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just catch a couple and cook them up, and you could take them down." So I took them down in this little wagon. I was only a kid. So they put them in this little wagon and pulled them down, and they give me $20 for it. And that's a lot of money in those days. But that sticks in my mind, Here was a person from another country I never met before, and interacting and almost getting into the chicken business.
There was a shortage of everything.
We had rations. You could only get so much tea, so much coffee, so much sugar.
We always liked their chocolate bars. They were very great at giving out chocolate bars.
They came out this one day, and there's a couple of guys that were trying to tell my dad that that would be a good truck to have on the farm. Well, we couldn't quite see what on the farm, but anyway, they were all there. And they insisted to my dad, maybe, we could bring one of them up. Let's just take it someplace, and hide it until after this is all over, and then you'd have a truck. Oh, Dad said, "I don't think we need one of those very bad." So anyway, we laughed and talked about it, and a few days later, out they come with a tank. And so this one fellow said, "Well, you don't want the truck, we thought maybe we should bring a tank."
We go to the canteen, a club sort of for the Army, and they'd have dances there, and then a beer parlor type of thing.
And we all had GI keys. And these guys would leave their vehicles, bring their vehicles down, and every key fit every vehicle. So we'd drive them around, when they dance. We never got caught.
The older people, if they consumed any alcohol, it was outside, and they were able to smoke inside. Now it's just the opposite.
There were so many people in this town that the Dewdrop Inn pub was filled to capacity every night, and it was so cold that they would start campfires on the street to warm up in anticipation of being able to return to the pub to have 2 more beer just in order to be kicked out the back door again.
We hauled coal out of Hudson Hope for the U.S. Army, the Canadian Army, the Air Force. We hauled it up the highway for a number of years.
Our job was just to get supplies up the highway. Well, you got so much a mile per ton, from food to cement to culvert material on the road.
It really opened up the peace here then.
On February 13th of 1943.
And it was a nice, it was kind of a Chinooki day like.
My dad was just coming home from work at 6 o'clock. As he come up on top of the hill to come towards our place, he saw this fire.
And this building was burning. It was an old livery barn.
In those days, everybody turned out to see a fire. So we run this half-mile through the field down to the fire.
Our dad was having a haircut, and the story is told that he went to assist the volunteer fire department.
And then Carwango.
And the explosion happened.
I'll never forget that.
but I know I went up and I looked down and I could, as far as I could see the boxcars, you know, just like you put a string of them nickel box of matches out there. Probably the first flight I ever had in this country.
So then someone came running out and saying that everybody get out of here, there's dynamite in there and it's going to blow up. So I guess we all scattered, most of us anyway. I remember I did.
Well, they stored the dynamite, but they stored the caps there too. And that's what caused the explosion in this barn, you know. Everything went flying, and there was a stove sitting on the platform at the station, and apparently it was picked up and thrown, and no, it was really a mess.
And our dad was killed. The U.S. Army assumed responsibility for his death, and after several months and a couple of hearings, she received a small settlement, which was for her then being a widow at this point.
And come down and landed and started to get the hell out of there, running, you know. Laid out, and I sat down and started looking at it. My buddy was on the car, he come along, he said, "This is where you got to." He said, "Wasn't there a hell of a bang?" You bet you would.
And all that was left was the co-op store. And then there was about 4 big chimneys stuck up there. They just looked like totem poles. And all the rest of it was right flat.
And as far as how many people got killed in that, I think there was about 3 civilians. But I think probably there was a lot of American soldiers, because they sent them in there to try and find out what was causing the fire and put the fire out. And I mean, they were just there and they were gone. They never found them again.
Do you recall when we came here last year and how surprised we were at how the town had exploded? But Constance, the town actually did explode not too long ago. In February, as a matter of fact. A good thing the Army was here and all their manpower. They helped a great deal by organizing the cleanup and maintaining order, I am told. Things have sure changed in this country, and I'm feeling a mite crowded in nowadays, but I realize that for you and the kids, things are a lot better than they were. Roads all over the place. Trains now and even aeroplanes. It's getting so a fellow feels rushed, not like the days when I walked or rode a horse or paddled a boat to get where I wanted to go. This here road they've built goes all the way to Alaska. This is where I feel I can find employment.
Finally, on the 20th of November, 1942, 8 months after the first troops plunged into the northern bush, the Pioneer Road from Dawson Creek to Fairbanks was officially opened. Following closely behind the soldiers who built the Pioneer Road came civilian contractors to turn it into a permanent all-weather road. They established their own camps and repair facilities at vantage points along the route. As ice formed in lily pads on the rivers, strange new patterns in steel rose against the cold northern sky.
Suspension bridge. Originally the Army brought it from somewhere down by Seattle. It had collapsed down there too.
Holy.
And they brought it up, and it was a major link on the Alaska Highway.
It was just temporary population. You know, I mean, the Army pretty well disappeared, and the Army workers, but they disappeared. They were only here for, I don't know, 8 months or so. But it was a start.
The highway, well, that was a wonderful thing. It made you feel like you're more part of BC, which we were. We became part of BC. Then before, the Peace River was, nobody heard about it.
When I drove it there in the early 50s, why, you'd think they'd followed a snake through the woods or a drunk, one way or the other, but they followed the streams. But it was something out of this world that you won't forget it.
Actually, going back in when I first started in '56, the roads were wide, and the Army maintained them. Was all.
The talk of the railroad coming in from Vancouver, from Prince George, the BC Rail, the Hart Highway, another link to the coast. It all helped to bring our Peace River block onto the world markets.
Well, my dear, the war has come to an end and the rationing is over. It was a hard time for all concerned, but we made it through. There are now more people arriving from Eastern Europe, German-speaking Sudetans with terrible stories of the war over there.
And after Hitler lost the war, then the Czechs threw some of the Sudeten people out of the country. And the ones, like my mother was a widow with 2 children, we were expendable, you know. And then we didn't know whether we would end up in East Germany or West Germany, but we were put on trains. And then we were just unfortunate enough to end up in East Germany. And so we lived in this small place for 2 years until, and in that same apartment, a man lived who kind of helped people cross the border and showed them where to go. We had to, of course, leave everything behind, and we didn't really have that much. And just looked like we were going for a afternoon stroll, right? I just remember walking and then having to crawl through a wheat field. And as we came out of the wheat field, here there were soldiers. And I remember how scary that was. And they were actually not Russian soldiers. They were German German soldiers in the Russian army. And we thought, well, that's it. We're being stopped. Either 1 or 2 of the soldiers had been in the army and were actually prisoners in Canada during the war. And they were treated so well. So then Mom showed them the papers of that we got from up here, from my uncle, that we had to that we were going to Canada, and the trips paid for and all that. I guess that they felt sorry for a mother with her 2 kids, and they let us go.
I came here in 1952. And the reason came, I was born and raised in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Germany. It was once part of Prussia, of Greater Prussia. All the people at that time, to make it short, had been expelled. And since I came from a family of farmers, for several hundred years, my folks were always farmers. I chose Canada as one of those destinations to seek a new home, to be a farmer. Ended up in Toronto, and one day I read a little periodical in the paper, and was looking for a job for farm occupation in some kind. And I read, and I don't think it was more than a couple of inches wide and maybe 5 inches long. It was highlighted for the wonderful last pioneering country in Canada. And since it says you don't need no money, you need nothing, you just willingness to work, and you can become wealthy and rich.
My dear wife, I just found out that they are going to build this big dam up here at Hudson's Hope. It is disappointing to realize that beautiful river where we took that memorable canoe trip will be gone, as well as all those acres of fertile river land. But that is progress, and the need for electricity is great.
Back in '55, my brother and I, we started taking river trips up the Peace River with a boat. So we carried that on until we got settled out by the WRC Bennett Dam. It was a great time to go, because the only place in North America where you can cross through the Rocky Mountains by boat.
The old Wienisk used to come up with freight, but there wasn't too much otherwise boats.
At the starting of the dam, there was no road. And they built ice bridge, and I remember that I was still in school when that happened too. And then later they did the dam thing.
When I was working on the dam, or not on the dam, but hauling cement to the dam, I watched the penstocks being put up as we hauled the cement in. And then I watched the lake flood and everything changed.
One of the amazing things was that the school changed from a one-room school to a student body of 907 pupils that first couple of years of the building of the dam.
We did have property above the dam that we lost. They flooded. They gave us some mountainside that really wasn't very much value.
Well, if we could have all just stuck together, nobody sold till everybody sold. They got all the property for just about nothing.
Then we had the tourists that were going to for up to the dam, when the dam went in. Yeah, in fact, my oldest son worked there at the dam.
Spring 1982, Tumbler Ridge. A letter to my dear wife Constance from another frontier, Tumbler Ridge, a place of such beauty that it takes my breath away and makes my eyes mist over. I am parked on a ridge overlooking the new town site, and the air up here in this high mountain valley is so fresh and crisp, and the views are so clear that I can see where they are building the town and the 2 coal mines. Somewhere down there amidst all the construction and hectic activity of the ant-like workers and their machines is our oldest boy and his family, waiting for my arrival. It will be so good to see them again, and I only wish you were here with me. I find myself looking at the countryside with different eyes, my darling. Eyes that no longer view it as a challenge or as a source of revenue, but as something to just look at and enjoy. I can sit back now and say to myself that I've traveled those trails and looked over those hills and worked hard to make a living from those forests. And I am satisfied that I did my best, Constance. I am coming home. My wandering has ended. The only road I travel now is with you, my love. I return soon. Dear heart, look for me before the next moonfall. Jeremiah.
We came out here one time and we was going to lease this land here. We didn't even know there was going to be a Tumbler Ridge, and was going to raise big horses.
So we put in for it. We sent to Prince George and put in for the whole property. We marked it all out, and it came back and they said if the town, they were planning a town in the fall, and if the town didn't go, then we had first dibs. We had first dibs at the land, but the town went. And of course we thought, why would they build a town right out in the middle of nowhere? Like, it didn't make sense to us.
You know, you just drop out of over the big hill there. And
yeah, we were up on the ridge there.
Town down here.
And it was just beautiful, you know, the grass was just lush all down along the rivers.
Tumbler Ridge started, yes, we were here in this September of 1982. And they found that some of the families had come up here with their husbands because they were working in the construction area. So they had a makeshift school built in a Kilbourne construction site, which was out of town here.
First, there was no accommodation for teachers, and second, there was no accommodation for anybody because none of the houses were finished yet. And no, the first year we were here, the town was basically completely built. As you look at it now, there are really hardly any new homes, but none of them were occupied. They didn't get them finished. And so we sat in a house of empty houses, in a town of empty houses.
A lot of things about us that was new. We were working in the mining industry at that time. We were the highest paid people in Canada per capita. We were opening up the largest open pit mine in North America. We were shipping our coal by electric rail, something that had never been done before. A large workforce at Quintet. I think there was times when we had in the area 1,600 employees.
And it was a difficult thing to do, to have a social community, because a lot of people came with the expectation of staying 2 years and then moving on. So they never really felt that this was their home.
Right.
And then you find somebody who's been there for 10 years, you say, how come? Because Tumbler was such a nice place to be in.
it's a tough life being a miner. Not just anybody can be a miner. It's got to be, takes a certain amount of toughness. And these people in Newfoundland that had been working in mines, and it was a natural fit for them. Most of them, you know, their heart is in the West now. Their love will always be Newfoundland, of course, and why wouldn't it be? But the West has been good to a lot of us.
Like our girls say, they're glad they're not, their grandmothers were the pioneers they didn't want to be, you know.
We start really hard, but we made it. We made it. We made it. We were really pioneers, you can say.
My darling Jeremiah, I find myself putting pen to paper as I reminisce about the years gone by at East Pine. When I was by myself, I counted the days and prayed that you would be returned to me. The candle continuously in the window. And as we were blessed with children and as they grew up, I yearned for your return and safekeeping. I remember the nights that you were not there to hold me, my darling, though I knew that you were out providing for our survival in this harsh land. May this letter find you on the last leg of your journey as you stop in Tumbler Ridge to see our oldest son, wife, and children. My undying love travels with you, my dearest, awaiting your return to my side as always, your dear wife and companion, Constance.
Something missing every day. We don't understand it. The light has grown dim, but it's the call of the breeze reaching out to them, reaching out to them, reaching out to them. Listen to the heartaches, the laughter and the tears. Feel the call of the peace as our great elders did. Look upon the mountains and the valleys below. Can you see the awesome wonders? Feel the call of peace. Can you see the awesome wonders? Feel the call of
there's a long story behind how this whole project came about. I was working on the Pouce Coupe Library Board at the time, and we had a rep from HRDC come by and explain to us that there were funds available to run programs. What kind of things would the library like to do? So as a board, we came up with the idea that we would really like to record the local history in whatever fashion we could. Right now, the library had all kinds of history books, but we didn't have anything local. And the fact that kids these days, they don't read history books. It's not something they check out of the library for fun. But they might watch a movie, because that is the
purpose and the accomplishment of what you did on this project.
So we only have a 1-year term. That's the maximum that we can run on a program of this style. And in order to make a full-blown movie and interview 200 seniors in 1 year, it can't be done by boards. So Hill Computing just took on that task and donated money back to the library and gave them the results. So that's how that came about. Well, I chose to go with the Mac environment simply because in the graphic design world, that is the tool of choice. With purchasing a Mac lab, we had all the software and hardware that we needed to run the program. Later on in the program, we did find that iMovies, which is the production software for making movies, wasn't quite enough to give us the professional touch that we were looking for. iMovies is great for home movies and creating movies that are strictly based on still photography with narration. But if you're looking for an action docudrama, you might call it, we had to go the step up and purchase Final Cut Express, which is another Mac product, just more the professional version. That was definitely a work in progress from the start. Two of the team members, Alice and Vicky, each wrote songs related to the movie that we're doing. From those songs, we sent it out to a professional, and they rewrote the song to fit what we needed. We had Bert Goulet, a wonderful sound man, audio technician. He's been a godsend to this project. And through all of the people that have been helping out, they made the sounds, they played their instruments, they've been working at his sound lab endless hours, just pulling together and creating this wonderful soundtrack. We have Keith Hall was helping with the songwriting. We had his vocal students singing all the songs, and the result of that is just incredible.
Check it out. Look upon the mountains on the mountains and the fields. Can you see the awesome wonders and hear the calling of the cow? Listen to the heartache, the laughter and the tears. They are the elders of the peace, and they're helping us to see through the wisdom of their eyes the roads they travel down. We are when children grow up, marry, move away.
I had a lot of consultants helping out. I am not a movie producer. This is my first go around at trying out a project of this style. So I needed help. So So I pulled in Bert Goulet. Mostly I pulled him in for audio, but he has proven that he is versatile in movie making just in general. We had Peace Photographics with Trent Ernst helping out with storylines and how to develop a story. We had Hank Bridgman coming in helping us out with the tips and tricks on how to do a good interview and how to set up the cameras to get the best point of view.
Start off by getting my knee on camera.
Right.
Spelling it. How many times do I have to tell you that? All right.
So, Mr.
First, it'll just happen on its own. You can't force it. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bridgman, and
Mr. Bridgman, for your time, and
you can turn it off now.
We had Heather Howie coming in helping us with, well, how do you transcribe? Because there's a lot more to it than you think. The initial concept of this project was to record history. The final movie is kind of an extra perk out of it. The key thing that we got out of it was 155 interviews, which we took off of our handycams. We're using very basic equipment here. We took off the handycam, put it into our Mac. We added some titling and credits, did a little bit of editing, and what we did was we burned on DVD each interview. So we have this catalog of DVDs with each interview on them, with the transcribing documents to match each interview. So each interview not only is on DVD, but is transcribed, so you can actually go to the library and read it. We've set up one Mac machine, which will be donated to the Pouce Coupe Library. All the transcripts will be in what's called a PDF format. You'll be able to search through this document for names, places, events, and look through all the transcripts that relate to that search word. I would say the interview process and the transcribing was one of the more challenging parts. For the first while, it was tough to get the seniors on board to actually sit in front of a camera. They were saying, no, I don't want my picture out there. But we had one team member that pulled out the phone book and went through her old haunts in Chetwynd, and she started getting on the phone, and it kind of steamrolled from there.
Yeah, of course.
Do you want to sit here?
But so I just wanted to know where you wanted to start.
Here? We want
Everything.
whatever you want to give us.
I mean, we can be here for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, but I mean, that means a lot of editing.
5 boys and 3 girls. I'm single. Do you have any single sons? Yes. Okay, tell.
And, oh, I'm drawing a blank. So,
Tell me about the men's arms. Nice big arms on the men?
Oh, I don't know, he's kicking good. I think a lot of this is the spunk.
Spunk. The kids got your spunk?
No, what you're getting into.
No, it's a good thing. I've tried to tell her for years that she should write down her story, but she doesn't think that it makes any difference to posterity.
This project has taught me that with the right set of people and the right team, you can accomplish anything. You put your mind to something, if you want it bad enough, you can do it.
Ace photojournalist
Tomorrow we're supposed to have more ideas.
and executive assistant Lorraine Clancy from Newfoundland. The Newfoundland girl made her into the big time here.
Tanks, my tanks.
Thanks. She's from, I think she's from St. Anthony.
Don't. Okay, so we have enough shots written down?
Her first power trip, our new director. Could be unbearable down the road, but we're going to see how this plays out.
We know how to control her. All we have to do is turn the camera on her, and
Yes, she does seem to be touch camera shy. That'll be our tool, putting her in her place. She's going to try and overcome that.
As she gets used to it, we'll.
Can you read that?
I'm going to zoom in on that. Does it say F-U... What's it say?
You're fired.
You're fired. Oh, I thought it said something a little more drastic.
One thing about this project that I am very proud of is the success of the job creation portion. We started out with 10 participants. Throughout the year, we have placed successfully in jobs 7 of those people, which we just keep replacing. They have found very rewarding work out of it in new careers. And they keep finding very... Oh my Lord.
As one of your employees, we want to thank you so much. We feel we couldn't have done it without your initiative. And it's good to be here and be able to interview you and hear all the things that you have contributed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bring the cover home here, man!
4, 3, 2, 1.
How'd it go?
Good, we're doing it.
They said it happened a long time ago. Traveling north and west to the vast unknown. Looking for the land of the peace where their dreams could grow. A story of venture never fully told, fully told. Hard times, good people with a vision for the land. A sense of humor and a helping hand. Raising up a family and teaching them the way. To prove and to coax the land for the bounty it would pay. It would pay. They are the elders of the peace, and they're helping us to see through the wisdom of their eyes the road they've traveled down. They are the elders of the peace, and the memories that they share are a treasure we can cling to when we need to carry on.
Well, if they listen, they may, like sometimes if you just listen, you can hear what an elder is saying, rather than just the words that come out of it. You know what he's saying.
Learn more about the old time ways of doing things.
Try and tell them all they got to go through school.
Now, if you don't have grade 12, you're not going nowhere. And even with grade 12, you're still not going anywhere unless you get something after that.
I mean, you've got to have good education now.
Learn what it's offered to you, and go somewhere else when you're finished, at least for a while.
Get their education and
Yes, they
become
need
a
that
politician or something.
Main thing is get a good education.
If you can, get a trade.
Doesn't matter whether it's a professional one or whether it's clerical staff or anything else, but get the education.
Work hard and kind of support the community, and I think the community will support you back.
Hard work never killed anybody, I know that. I mean, they don't not too many want to do it anymore, but it sure didn't hurt any of us when we had to do it.
Work hard and enjoy it.
Work hard, I guess.
Working hard and keep them out of debt.
You just work hard, stay with it, don't give up.
What comes, that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, you got to roll with it.
Just set your goals and work towards it.
I think maybe the best advice I could give is to always love your family and see that, talk to them whenever you can and whatever. Because there's so many people I find nowadays don't even keep in contact with their brothers and sisters. And I feel bad for that.
Brothers and sisters, no matter who we are, we're supposed to love each other.
Never ask your children for something about what they've done unless you know definitely that they're not going to lie. Don't force a child to lie.
So I would suggest that parents see that their children get a certain amount of religious training in order to get onto the right track of life and not worry about the dollar so much, and that mothers, if they possibly can, stay home and look after their children.
Should have a little more respect for their parents, a little more respect for themselves, and a little bit more respect for the country around them.
It's a Lord-given thing. You have to always respect your family, your elders. If you don't, you don't get anywhere.
You cherish your family and your friends, because no matter where you go, no matter how small a community or how large, I think that's so important, and to realize, you know, the value of your family and friends, and not to ever take them for granted.
I agree with what he said. Like, stick to what you want to do.
Just be committed to what we're doing. My mother used to tell us when we were growing up, she said, before you get married, keep your eyes wide open, and afterwards keep them half shut.
Watch out who you pick for a husband.
We worked hard at building up what we've got and enjoying the children and just being together. I don't know, I mean, we've never really disagreed to any great extent about whatever we were doing. We both kind of thought along the same lines, I guess.
I think one of the things that probably was the most helpful, and it was something I found very hard when we were first married, was Earl always says, we're not mind readers. We can't read each other's minds. If you got something to say it.
The one thing that concerns me the most about the younger generation is marriages falling apart. But I do feel that the fabric of our country really depends on whether families can stay together or not.
Well, I can tell all the young girls nowadays, when you get married, make sure you have your own bank account.
Make something, get out in life, make something for yourself, but don't expect that the government are going to supply you with a living.
Don't come in and expect the world.
I think if something has to be done that maybe you don't like, if it has to be done, there's no sense whining and complaining about it. Just get busy and do it.
Just go out and try it. Do it yourself, see what it's like.
It's a good idea to plan something and get a goal, and the important thing to do is to stick with it.
Enjoy life and make the best of it. Do something that you really, really enjoy.
Do unto others as you'd have them do to you.
Well, I think people should be positive, think positive, because out of every adversity that comes, if you look at it, there is some good, and you should look for that.
I think one thing that's been somewhat lost is respect for other people. I think you really need to maintain that, your respect for each other.
I feel today that nowadays things are just a bit too materialistic. People are wanting things, and of course, I think like big business and that, they're right there pushing you. You need this, you want this, you have to have this, you can't be happy without that. And that's not the case at all.
Today, it's different. Today, it's all money. And I don't know, in one way, it's not the way to live, but that's the way it is. Money is a good thing to have, but money is not everything in this world. Life is. You must look after your life.
I think the least they have, the more they appreciate.
If you ever want to sell, just make sure that you know what you're going to do, because if you sell, you can't go back.
If they want to follow their dream, let them go ahead.
Look after your health.
We get in such a rut, and I think just that sitting around doesn't cost anything, but I think possibly that sharing feeling is what's missing.
Yeah, I think that everybody that can should learn to sew and do different things, can and all that stuff. Then you got something for later on.
Life is just like an echo. If you go in the area where there is an echo, if you scream in, it will scream back at you.
If you laugh, it will laugh back at you. If you sing into it, it will sing back at you.
Never be afraid to move.
Like if you can just make each day the best you can make it. You know, like you're not going to get a chance at this day again.
Until our young people wake up to realize that we have to change, and it is up to them to really perhaps show the other of us that there's more to life than the way we're going. We have to.
I guess that being happy is a state of mind rather than what actually happens. And if you decide to be happy, you can be happy regardless of most things. And you might as well enjoy life instead of griping about it.
Family comes first in anything, and friends.
Too many people think like when I'll wait till I retire. Don't do that. Do it every day. Because sometimes that retirement doesn't come.
You know, they say there are no jobs, and but get with it. There are so many jobs to be had, and even if you don't have an education, you can be trained, go for it and forget the drugs.
Be true to yourself. Go throughout life with honesty and integrity.
I guess I'll just go by the age-old adage. They say you drink out of the peach, you'll always come back.
Some things are worth it and will never go away. Someone just passing through and never meant to stay. But the peace got a hold of their hearts and mesmerized their minds and lured them to stay for the wonders they would find. They would find. They are the elders of the peace, and they're helping us to see through the wisdom of their eyes the roads they've traveled down. They are the elders of the peace, and the memories that they share are a treasure we can cling to when we need to carry on. It's time to remember the tales of the past, making true and making friends that will last. The new beginnings became the dream that stayed. You taught us to laugh